the history of skateboarding was that if you wanted to do it, there were no places to go, so you had to be kind of a rebel to start doing it at all. You had to hop fences, you had to get kicked out of schoolyards and plaza areas because there was no place to do it, but people found a passion for it. So if you look beyond that sort of stereotype, you'll see that these kids are highly disciplined, very motivated, very creative, and very supportive of each other, even though they're doing a sport that is individual based. So I would say to parents, let your kid sort of find their way. Don't interfere. That one of the worst things you could do is to go yell at another kid at a skate park for whatever, dropping in on your kid. Unless they're putting them in grave danger, I understand. But if you're going to try to police the other kids at a skate park, you're going to have your kid marked for years to come.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is the one and only Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk is a legendary skateboarder. He really needs no introduction whatsoever. This is his second appearance on the podcast. It's a big honor to have him back on First Class Fatherhood. So get down there, tap the subscribe button, hit the like, and let's jump into it right now with Tony Hawk on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Tony Hawk. Welcome back to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, it's awesome to have you here again. I don't think you had any more since the last time we spoke. How old are the kids now? How are they doing?
Yes, there are no more to be had. Let's put it that way. How old are they? They're 28, 22, 19, 18, and 12.
Man, yeah, that's good stuff. And the last time we spoke, Tony, you had just posted the video of your daughter overcoming her fear of the skateboard. That video obviously went viral. How is she doing now? How has her progress been on the skateboard? She's still doing good.
She's kind of gotten out of skating in the last year or so, mostly because none of her friends were skating. And so it was just the thing that we did together, and it got to be that she wanted to join what the sports that her friends were doing. So she started up in lacrosse, and that's been great because she's enjoyed it. She's starting to get a lot better at it, and she likes the community. And it was funny. She and I basically learned to throw and catch the ball together. And then once she joined a team, she got exceedingly better than me at it.
Yeah, that's one of those games that I really don't know much about. I enjoy watching it. I just never was involved in it as a kid, so I'm not too familiar with it. And what would you consider to be, Tony, the top values that you hope to instill in all your kids growing up?
I think having accountability and being responsible and I mean, it all seems cliche, but making good choices, if nothing else. That's what I hope that I've led them by example with, is making good choices. And for them to also take time for themselves, to not just be so hyper-focused on work or on goals, and to goof around. I mean, that, as silly as that sounds, that keeps your mental health so much in check. With them, I mean, that's what I try to. That's usually where I find my balance is just kind of doing stuff with them. However playful or what seems like a waste of time, to have time with them is never a waste of time.
Yeah, well said, Tony. And then on that, I know a lot of the things I ask a lot of the elite athletes that come on the show here, as a son myself, we always seek that approval from our dad. We want our dad to be proud of us. We look up to him. To have a dad that's Tony Hawk, that's a lot to live up to. It could be overwhelming, especially for your sons. Did you ever feel that kind of pressure? Obviously, Riley had his own skateboarding career, was great in his own right, but did you ever feel that pressure from your kids growing up? And how did you kind of navigate that to make sure that they didn't feel that pressure?
Yeah, I think that it was more an issue with my oldest son because he chose to be a pro skateboarder. And so there was always that sort of shadow looming and expectation of him. But he managed to really take it in his own direction and do a style of skating that I don't do, and find an audience of people that weren't necessarily just because of they were fans of mine. And the other kids, I think that they understand that, but they just enjoy skating. Like they just enjoy having fun with it. So it's not that they feel like, oh, I've got to live up to something. And the funny thing is they're all really good at it in their own way, and they all have their own style, and they all have their own crew. And a lot of that crew does not include me. So when they're out skating, like they don't want me hanging around.
Yeah.
I'm just like I'm the dad at the party or something.
Well, it's got to be cool for you to look down and see them doing it in their own right. It's got to be pretty cool. And then one thing I talk about on my podcast a lot, Tony, is the fatherless crisis that we have going on. We got so many kids growing up without a father or a father figure in their life, and it's having a devastating result on our society. And one of the major reasons given for this is divorce. Dads get pushed out through the divorce process. You've been through this, and you have a great co-parenting situation going on with a blended family. So what kind of advice do you have for the dad out there who may be just on the onset of the divorce, a co-parenting situation and a blended family?
I think my best advice is just to stay present. Don't give up. And sometimes you got to fight for it. And sometimes you can't just leave it up to your kids necessarily. Like, what do you want to do? What about next Wednesday? It's just like set a schedule and stick to it. Because I've noticed that, especially with my youngest, that if I'm just leaving the decisions up to her, or the schedule, she's not going to choose necessarily stuff that we're going to do together or to be with me, but she needs that sort of that schedule and that consistency. And so that's the best advice I have, is just to stay consistent with it, be ready, be present, and push through the challenges of what seems like elements that are not going to allow you to be with them, because you got to keep you got to keep treading water. You got to stay with them. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's worth the effort. That's
Yeah,
that's
great.
my bottom line. And sometimes it seems like it's just an uphill battle all the time, to make time or to get a schedule going, and you just got to find it and stick with it. And that's what I've learned through this crazy year we've had, because my schedule was finally much more consistent in terms of travel. There was no travel, and I realized how helpful that was to a couple of my kids, that they knew every Tuesday or Wednesday or every Friday we're going to do something together. Whether it be go out to eat, see a movie or something, but that consistency really helped them with their mental health too.
Yeah, good stuff, Tony. And it's awesome to see. You're definitely an inspiration to see the way that you do make it work. And that has been an underlying theme that I've talked to dads throughout the pandemic, is that they've had an opportunity to spend more time with their family and do more things and stay home and stay present. So that's kind of been a little silver lining throughout the pandemic. And I have 4 kids myself, Tony. My youngest is my only girl. I know your daughter's too young yet. My oldest is 15. He's already starting to get into that world of peer pressure and that dating scene. You've been through this. What kind of advice did you give to your kids when they became old enough to start dating?
Uh, I don't know if I ever put some sort of limit number on that. I feel like when I saw that they started to be interested in relationships, then trying to give them the best advice I could. But they definitely have a lot of freedom. And they all were able to drive right when they turned of age, and that was another whole new sense of freedom. Um, I only have one girl, and she's only 12. So I know that it's a whole different issue with girls and dating. And so I'm going to cross that bridge when I get there. I don't I don't really have an answer for you on that one. The
Yeah.
boys are relatively easy. All the relationships they've been in were more from their circle of friends. It's not like they're going on dating apps or anything like that.
Yeah, my girl's only 6, so I thank God I've got a while to go myself there. So I'm going to watch you to keep an eye on what happens there for some
Okay.
advice later
I
down the
feel like
line.
I feel like it's coming soon. She's turning 13 next month.
Well, God bless you with that. And I know right now, turning it back into skateboarding for a second here, one of the things, another thing I talk about too is how this every kid gets a trophy philosophy has been a colossal failure, in my opinion, the way that that's played out. Now we see skateboarding into the Olympics for the very first time. And how does the skateboarding in the Olympics going to contrast to this, to the skateboarding in the X Games? And is it going to change the focus from the skill set more on the award portion of skateboarding? How do you see this playing out?
Well, it's not like the Olympics are reinventing the wheel of competition for skateboarding, and in fact, if anything, we're teaching them how you do make a competition out of skateboarding because it's so subjective that it's a little tricky to compare apples to oranges. So I think it'll turn out well. I think it'll be one of the highlights of the games for sure. What's different than the X Games? Well, the events, there's not the half pipe event, the vertical event, which is a lot of people come to know from the X Games. So that's not a discipline in the Olympics because, but mostly because the other countries don't have access to those. But they do have access to the general skate parks, which is sort of a hybrid of street elements and pool elements, and so that's the one of the disciplines that's going into it. Um, I don't think it changes the approach of skating either. There are plenty of people who skate that don't care anything about competition and they feel like it's their identity. They love it. They enjoy the culture of it. They enjoy the camaraderie of it. And then there's another faction of people that are all about the competition and they're trying to get the sponsors and they're trying to win the big events. And all of those groups can coexist. Um, sure, there's going to be a generation of kids growing up that see skateboarding as an Olympic sport, as some sort of gateway to fame and fortune, but that was inevitable. I mean, so, there was a group of kids that saw that of the X Games, and they wanted to be sponsored by Red Bull and Mountain Dew, and they wanted to be extreme, and so hey, whatever gets people interested in skateboarding, I'm down.
Yeah, and you've been responsible for getting a lot of kids involved in skateboarding. And one thing, this is sure to put a lot more kids skateboarding on the map for a lot more kids. What kind of advice do you have for the dad out there who's never been in the skateboarding world, never did it as a kid, whose kid now is interested in skateboarding, wants to get down to the skate park? What kind of advice? How would that dad try to steer the kid or get involved?
I'd say be encouraging. Them find their own way and look deeper. On the surface, a lot of parents get scared away from skateboarding because they think it has these negative connotations or influences around them. Just because of the history of skateboarding was that if you wanted to do it, there were no places to go, so you had to be kind of a rebel to start doing it at all. You had to hop fences, you had to get kicked out of schoolyards and plaza areas because there was no place to do it, but people found a passion for it. So if you look beyond that sort of stereotype, you'll see that these kids are highly disciplined, very motivated, very creative, and very supportive of each other, even though they're doing a sport that is individual based. So I would say to parents, let your kid sort of find their way. Don't interfere. That one of the worst things you could do is to go yell at another kid at a skate park for whatever, dropping in on your kid. I mean, unless they're putting him in grave danger, I understand. But if you're going to try to police the other kids at a skate park, you're going to have your kid marked for years to come.
Well,
I know
yeah.
from experience.
Interesting stuff. And then I know, Tony, you just recently dropped a new podcast here, Hawk vs. Wolf podcast. What was the genesis of that, and what can the listeners expect to hear when they tune in?
Sure. So Jason Ellis is a longtime friend of mine, pro skater turned radio personality who he and I started with a show on Sirius XM about 16 years ago. We had a show called Demolition Radio, and it was successful, so successful that he broke out and did his own show called the Jason Ellis Show on the same channel. I've since stopped doing my show. He has since stopped doing his own show, and we decided to come back together and combine forces for a podcast because I felt like we both started to get really good at what we were doing on the air, and we were in a place where we weren't getting much support. So we just decided to go rogue and do it on our own. And we're excited because I feel like between he and I, we have some really great stories to tell. And we're going to have great guests. And our first episode was with Lizzie Armanto, who's a pro skater who survived this horrific crash back in October. And so she told the whole story of her crash and her recovery from it. And so I feel like we started with a bang, and we're going strong.
Yeah, very cool, Tony. I'm going to drop the link in the description of this podcast episode so my listeners can go over there and check it out. Now, there was rumors rumbling here that there's a new Tony Hawk Pro Skateboarder video game in development here. Can you add anything to that here? Any information on that, or maybe make this interview go viral?
I don't have information on that that I can give you. I think someone might have misspoke about that recently, and so I can't talk about it. But let's put it this way: I certainly hope so. I hope those rumors are true.
Yeah, very cool. That's good enough for me here, Tony. And obviously, Father's Day is coming up here. It's around the corner. What does the perfect Father's Day look like for you?
Oh man, I'm hoping to have all my kids in one place because three are off in college now. One is heading to college after the summer. So a couple of them have been coming home since graduating. One is still in Florida. So if I can get him home, that'll be a great Father's Day. I'll finally get to see all my kids again because it's been a while. My like I said, my son, that he was in college in Boston. He moved to Florida. He's been there ever since. And I saw him for his birthday in March. That was the first time I saw him in a year because we were living in this crazy simulation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that just now about the how the pandemic changed everybody's life upside down. Do you have any kind of family traditions that you guys keep together that you do year in and year out? Were any of them kind of broken up by the pandemic?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We sort of forced one. We try to take a vacation with our kids every summer at least, if not every summer and winter, where we'll go to we'll go to Hawaii or maybe Costa Rica or something and try to get everyone together for at least a week. And we knew that wasn't going to happen last summer, so we rented an RV and drove them across the U.S. and visited a bunch of landmarks, and that was really cool. It got hectic. There were at one point 8 of us in this RV. It's a little tight quarters. But whenever we would go to a city, we would get a couple hotel rooms as well, and it was fun. We saw Yellowstone, we saw Devil's Tower, we went to the Badlands, and it was there would have been no other reason for us to do that in the past.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff, Tony. And obviously, you're a legendary skateboarder and your legacy is secure in the skateboarding world and beyond. But what would you hope your legacy is as a dad?
That's a good question. I hope that my kids remember me as being available and important in their growth, and one that they can talk to. That if nothing else, one that they feel close enough to and confident enough with that they could share their struggles and their concerns, because that's the best I could do.
Yeah, very well said. And then obviously, we can't mention anything here, whether or not we got the game coming up. What other kind of goals or plans do you have here for yourself in the future, Tony? What's coming up for you that we could look forward to?
It's been crazy. Suddenly there's this sense of emergence with people traveling again and getting together, and so suddenly my calendar is booked nonstop. And it's exciting. I'd say probably the next thing that you'll see me maybe on a bigger scale would be at the Olympics. I'll be there for the first part of it, doing interviews and stuff. I'll be in Tokyo, and they're not allowing spectators in Tokyo unless you live in Japan. So I feel lucky that I got the golden ticket and I'm going to be there to see the inaugural event. Other than that, working on my skate park project foundation, which is a foundation for public skate parks in underserved areas. And we've been doing that almost 20 years now, and we've helped to fund over 1,000 skate parks. And I feel like we're hitting a stride now. And of course, with the Olympics coming, there's going to be even more desire for skate parks in communities.
Yeah, really awesome stuff, Tony. And the last thing I want to hit you with here, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast here, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Advice, I would say everything's going to change. It's going to be exhausting. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be sometimes seem impossible, but it's all worth it. Stick with it. It's the best thing that's going to happen to you.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. Tony Hawk, you're a first class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, man.